I was going through my closet. I was actually looking for something else to make another video, but I came across this old issue of the Etude magazine that I have. You see, it's April 1908 issue. So this is 102 years old. Of course, 1908 is in the middle of the ragtime era, but there's no mention of ragtime in this magazine. This was the musical hoi polloi, who thought ragtime was the devil's music. And so in fact, there's even a four-hand piano piece in here somewhere called The Negro Dance. It is completely unsyncopated, you would think. So there's no African-American rhythms in there whatsoever. But I found something very interesting, actually. I hadn't actually looked through this before. There's a letter from John Philip Sousa in the Letters to the Editor. New sketch discovered by a new Mozart sketch. See if I can find the letters to the editor section here. Yeah, here we go. It says, you notice this is how large this is. This was the standard page size in those days. During the Great War, World War I, is when the modern A4 or 8.5 by 11 sizes were taken as a saving measure. But before that time, here in 1908, everything was large form like this. So it says, Mr. John Philip Sousa denies a popular fiction. We recently received a very pretty little story about Mr. John Philip Sousa, which had been going the rounds of the foreign musical magazines. Suspecting the influence of that interesting romancer, the press agent, we sent the story to Mr. John Philip Sousa himself for verification before foisting it upon our readers in our staccato and legato column, which is devoted to wit, humor, and anecdote. Mr. Sousa's reply is characteristic and interesting. We have known him as a conductor, a novelist, and a composer, but now he reveals himself as a humorist of no mean pretensions. So here's his letter. Editor of the Etude. If there is one thing I dislike more than another, it is to spoil a good story. I vividly remember my infantile contempt for the punk-headed pirate who told me that Jack the Giant Killer never existed, and I clearly recall my undying hatred for the iconoclast who calmly informed me that Robinson Crusoe was a myth and his man Friday a black shadow without life and substance. I also despised the man who said that Nero was never a fiddler. Hence you can understand my position when you call on me in all seriousness to verify the story that my name is not Sousa but Philipso. When I received your letter, my first impulse was to allow you to hang on the tenterhook of doubt for some moons, and then, in the interest of truth, to gradually set you right. The story of the supposed origin of my name is a rattling good one, and, like all ingenious fables, permits of international variations. The German version is that my name is Sigismund Ochs, a great musician born on the Rhine, emigrated to America, trunk-marked S.O., USA, therefore the name. The English version is that I am one Sam Ogden, a great musician, Yorkshireman, emigrated to America, luggage marked S.O. USA, hence the cognomen. The domestic brand of the story is that I am a Greek named Philipso, emigrated to America, a great musician, carried my worldly possessions in a box marked S.O. USA, therefore the patronymic. This more or less polite fiction, common to society, has been one of the best bits of advertising I have had in my long career. As a rule, items about musical people find their way only into the columns of the daily press, a few of the magazines, and in papers devoted to music. But this item has appeared in the religious, rural, political, sectarian, trade, and labor journals from one end of the world to the other, and it is believed that it makes its pilgrimage around the globe once every 3 years. Its basilar source emanated about 10 years ago from the always youthful and ingenious brain of the publicity promoter, Colonel George Frederick Hinton. At that time, Colonel Hinton was exploiting Sousa and his band, and out of the inner recesses of his gray matter, he involved this perennial fiction. Since it first appeared, I have been called on to deny it in Afghanistan, Balochistan, Carniola, Denmark, Ethiopia, France, Germany, Hungary, Ireland, Japan, Kamchatka, Lapland, Madagascar, Nova Scotia, Oporto, Philadelphia, Quebec, Russia, Senegambia, Turkestan, Uruguay, Venezuela, Wallachia, Xenia, Yucatan, and Zanzibar. But, even with this alphabetical geographic denial on my part, the story, like Tennyson's Brook, goes on forever. Were it not for the reproving finger of pride pointed at me by the illustrious line of ancestral Sousas, I would let it go at that, Were it not for the decrying bunch of sisters and brothers ready to prove that my name is Sousa, and I cannot shake them, I might let your question go unheeded. My parents were absolutely opposed to race suicide, and were the authors of a family of 10 children, 6 of whom are now living, all married and doing well in the family line. So well, indeed, that I should say in about 1992 the name of Sousa will supplant that of Smith as our national name. Now for the historical record. I was born on the 6th of November, 1854, on G Street Southeast, near Old Christ Church, Washington, D.C. My parents were Antonio and Elizabeth Sousa. I drank in lacteal fluid and patriotism simultaneously within the shadow of the Great White Dome. I was christened John Philip at Dr. Finkel's Church on 22nd Street Northwest, Washington, D.C., and would say, had I an opportunity to be born again, I would select the same parents, the same city, and the same time. In other words, I, quote, have no kick coming, unquote. Very sincerely, John Philip Sousa. I thought that was quite interesting. You hear something from John Philip Sousa. And the writing in this book is very interesting. I mean, all writing from these days was so much different than writing today. And there's a review here, which is also indicative of the times, not only of the way it's written, but in what they say. It's a review of new publications. Another thing indicative of the time is they spell rhythm with only one H. So here we are. Review of new publications. The Rhythmic Conception of Music by Margaret Glynn, Longmans, Green and Company Publishers. Price $1.20 net. It seems somewhat astonishing that such a work as The Rhythmic Conception of Music should have come to us from the pen of a woman. Not that the writing of a work of this kind is unfeminate, but we are not yet accustomed to women who are engaged in scientific or philosophical pursuits. With the recent proud achievement of Madame Curie in the field of chemistry, we may expect almost anything. The Rhythmic Conception of Music is a little work of 191 pages, which delves into one of the main mysteries of musical art and reveals much that is helpful and instructive to the advanced student. In the first chapter, the writer states, quote, "It is the object of the present volume to indicate the broad lines of a new theory of music based upon the principle of rhythmic unity, to be followed by an educational textbook containing a complete analysis of the rhythmical form, which will weld all the various parts of musical education into a harmonious whole." Unquote. In the second chapter, historical evidence is given to support the writer's theory. In the third chapter, the writer attempts to show how rhythm is the true foundation of musical conception. She states, quote, "If the present obstructions in the path of music were removed, slowly but inevitably, the rhythmic consciousness would assert itself and lead away to fresh woods and pastures new." Unquote. The remaining chapters show a keen appreciation of the psychological and philosophical aspects of the question. The writer's erudition cannot be questioned, and the logical and sane presentation of her hypothesis is so convincing that one is willing to accept her conclusions as thesis. The book, while in a sense radical, is not altogether iconoclastic. It can be read with interest by students in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 6th grade who have had the benefit of a good collateral general education and who desire to attain a more intimate insight into the wonderful mysteries of the tone art. Very interesting writing there, but quite interesting how they're so surprised. Oh my gosh, women can actually do things. There are also some little ads here from the company that would become Post, the Post cereal company, like advertising grape nuts and how grape nuts are made and how they're good for you and so forth. And Postum, which I guess is how the Post company got their name. I'm not sure what Postum was, but they say you can eat grape nuts with Postum. A lot of interesting little ads here too. Well, I've got a little bit of time left on the video. Menin's toilet powder at Eastertide. Let's see if I can turn this upright so you can kind of actually see it. There. Baker's Cocoa, pianos, organ methods. A lot of ads in here. There's an ad for a chocolate company in here somewhere. So, I like all this old stuff. This is 102 years old. Interesting old stuff here. Alright, well, video time's almost up, so there you go. But yeah, I just thought the Sousa letter was interesting, so I'd record the video. Now I'll see if I can find the stuff that I was trying to get